all the participants, and talk about like my area of passion, which is the combination of badges and Africa. And I'm on presenter mode myself, so I'm not seeing the chat. So if there are questions that you want to ask in between, write them there, and Eric and Mina will alert me to stop. Otherwise, I'll reply to everything towards the end. I'll try to be fast and slow so that we'll have about 20 minutes for your questions towards the end. My first thing I want to explain, like, why do you have this white lady talking about Africa and education and badges there? And I wanted to give you a brief glimpse to my background. So although I am genetically 100% Finnish, I was raised in West Africa in Senegal as a kid and moved to Finland when I was 13 years old. So I lived in Senegal, in Saint-Louis, and mostly in Bour. And that kind of explains my connection to the continent and my affection and my willingness to go back home and work home and with people that resemble me sometimes more than the ones that I am genetically close to, close in DNA. So you have here some pictures on the upper left. That's our home. We lived in a working center. So the second floor, that's my home. In the middle, that's me with our two pets. We had originally a chicken and a rooster, but a hawk ate the chicken, so we were left with the rooster. But our night guard, because we're devastated, came one day and gave us a parrot, which is a Senegalese type of parrot who later learned how to speak to. But the rooster got jealous to the parrot, and because the parrot was always on our head and our shoulders, so the rooster wanted to do the same, and that's where I ended up with. And if you look very closely, you can see that actually that situation ended up with the rooster showing that he was not entirely hygienic. And then some other pictures. Bottom middle is our school in Senegal. Bottom left corner is our beach house where we went last year with my family. So the rest of the pictures is just about the ocean and the sea, because I was raised by the ocean, not by the lakes. And I think that defines my personality. But that is why I am working with Africa and with badges. Badges also because I have a background in working in education, especially vocational education in Finland and internationally for 15 years, which makes me feel a bit old. So I have my company SkillSafari, and what I aim to do is create successful careers to recognition and validation of skills. And for that work, I use open badges. This all started quite some time ago. In Finland, we were working on a development project where we validated teacher skills with open badges. And that gave me the idea of, what if we could apply the same approach in Africa? Imagine the impact we could have in a positive way. And a few years later, I quit everything and started my own journey. And it has been the best decision I've ever done in my life. Not easy, but thoroughly enjoyable. And Open Badge Factory is my trusted partner in crime, enabling all the work I do. So I'm really grateful for the partnership we have. But first, I want to tell you why badging in Africa, not just because I call it home and enjoy going there, but there's an actual need on the continent. And if we look at a map where the countries and the continents are put in real scale, we can see that actually Africa is way, way bigger than we are used to seeing in the thwarted maps that we usually look at. It's a huge continent. So just in terms of size, it has a lot of opportunities. And as you know, there's a lot of people there and lots of people in need of education. But this is also something I want you to keep in mind, because we tend to talk about Africa as one place. It's 54 different countries, 54 different cultures, 54 different types of people. And it's like comparing Italians and Finns. If you compare north, east, south of Africa, the cultures are really, really different. So let's respect the richness of the huge continent. Senegal is the westernmost. It's like the tip of the nose of the continent. And it's really sub-Sahara, basically north of Senegal was Sahara. But yeah, these are also facts that you all know, but there are over 600 million youth under the age of 25 on the continent. So we all know it's growing. The thing we don't really realize, especially in countries like Finland, where the population is diminishing, is that there's not this one bulk of youth in Africa. There's actually more youth every year. I was talking to a minister in Senegal one year, and he said that they have 10,000 kids more coming into the education each year. That means that if whatever they have this year, next year they'll have 10,000 more than the income of this year, and the next is 10,000 more again. So the education system has huge challenges. There's youth coming in, and the number of jobs is not growing at the same rate as there are people coming to the work market. And the result is that a majority of youth is unemployed or vulnerably employed. So a lot of youth who really don't have much options to do after they quit school, if they manage to quit school. So that's also an opportunity. You know, youth are amazing people. So it's a good bunch of people to work with because they have energy, they have will. But there's also a skills shortage. The number of schooling years tends to be quite low. And if you look at the results of the impact of the education and compare that to European countries, it's even lower than the actual number of schooling years people have had. Like a person in Finland going to school for 12 years and an African person going to school for 12 years, they don't have the same skills. But there's also this mismatch, people with too much skills end up to easy jobs. People with not enough skills end up in too demanding jobs. People with skills for one area of work end up working somewhere completely different, and people just keep failing, and it's not a very rewarding place to be. Because even if you get a job, most likely it's not the job for you. You have the right people with right skills in wrong places and wrong people in right places. It's a mix, and it's a challenge. And that's kind of where I come in and where I want to have an impact. Because people don't have real opportunities for jobs and really getting like formal employment, there's this huge thing called the informal economy, which means people doing odd jobs here and there, hustling, not really gaining official salaries, paying taxes. And that informal economy in sub-Saharan Africa makes up nearly 86% of all employment. So it's huge. So most of your restaurant waitresses, the guy who drives the taxi to take you from A to B, they are usually just hustling to make money. They're not paying taxes, and it has an impact on the GDP. The informal economy constitutes about 40% of GDP, which is huge. So there's a big trend in trying to formalize this, get people into a situation where they can gain real salaries, pay taxes, and then the taxes have an impact and so forth. So get this positive cycle ongoing. So that in short is what I'm interested in. A lot of education focuses on primary education or university education. And now we talk a lot about vocational education and skills development on the continent. But my question is, what about all those guys who are there? Not everybody can go to formal education because the numbers are too large. So what do we do with these people, the 600 million kids who are out there with some skills, maybe not enough? What can we do for them? Africa is a vast continent. It's filled with young people, and those guys, they are ready to invest. They are ready to spend money. They are ready to spend time in order to get better jobs. And that's what I see as an opportunity to do work that has meaning and impact. Cool. So today I want to talk to you about two things. What I've done with badges in Africa, like cases of the old normal, and then I'll move to cases of the new normal, because things have changed interestingly in the last 6 months on the continent. That what we talked about last year and this year, it's different, and it's raising hope for me. So in the old normal, my very first badging case in Tunisia that I presented here was in Tunisia. Badge on Tunisie. I worked with the National Center of Technologies and Education, and we wanted to look at what if we started measuring the teachers' competencies with badges. So we did 17 badges and 4 meta badges about ICT skills of teachers based on the UNESCO framework. And we had 22 teachers participating in the pilot in 12 different cities around the country, 2 different education levels. And we're looking at 2 things. One was like, how do teachers take this approach? Do they understand it? Can we, like, we're not giving them training, because my idea is really to use badges in validation of skills. So instead of offering training, I want to offer a way to validate the skills that you already have and do that with badges. And then if you need training, if there are badges you can't have, then we can provide training afterwards. But it's kind of trying to make the system more efficient and not just have everybody go through training. If you know something, you can show it, you can have the badge. That's the idea. So we wanted to see if the approach makes sense to teachers. And on the other side, we wanted to see if we are able to collect data from the teachers, like which teachers in what city get what skills, and are there some gap areas where then CNT can focus their training. And the end result was good. After the first few days, the teachers were really engaged. They got the approach super fast. They applied for badges. Most of them got all the badges. That was almost a downer. And we were able to get some data on different education levels, their performance, different cities, their performance, and so forth. Actually, there were not that many teachers, but still we could see that we can gather important data from the reports that we can take from Open Badge Factory. So that was a really cool thing. And the thing that makes me most happy was that the teachers were happy. Basically, we helped them understand what they know, what they should know, what they should be able to do, and what skills they already have. I'm a person who believes in really micro certificates, micro skills, small badges measuring very, very small individual skills and combining those into bigger things. I know that there are people who like to do bigger badges. I think everything is great, everything is fine. For me, I find it simplest, especially when we use badges for validation of the existing skills, to keeping them small, keeping them simple, because then they are more, more measurable. But yeah, so the first case was good. And then the work continued. And earlier this year, we did a similar project in Rwanda, which is one of my favorite countries on the continent. It's non-paid advertisement, but when you get to travel, if you haven't been to Africa, Rwanda has my warmest recommendations. It's an amazingly beautiful country, cleaner than Helsinki, cleaner than Finland, cleaner than most Western countries. People are friendly, the food is good. They grow coffee everywhere, so if you love coffee, that's the place to go. But anyways, we worked with teachers and ICT skills with the Rwanda Education Board. They have a platform, a Moodle course for teachers and ICT skills. And they wanted to see how we could combine badges to the course that they already have. Because one realization that they had was that the teachers are going through this course, but they don't know what they pick up from the course, because they go through it, they go through the materials, do the exercises, but are they able to apply? So that was really the focus of our project there. And for this, I was able to work with my amazing friend and colleague, Pete Stockley, who, well, Pete can make anything possible. So if you ever look for an amazing colleague, Pete has my warmest recommendation. But that's what we did this spring. We had 20 badges and 5 meta badges. The badges were a combination of the UNESCO framework and what they had in Rwanda, because their course was also built on the UNESCO framework. We had 27 teachers participating, and in the scope of over 3 weeks, we issued 297 badges to teach to these teachers. And this was even more interesting than Tunisia, because in this case, we had teachers with very varying skill levels, with partially limited access to the internet and devices. And at the end, we had COVID and lockdown. So the schools were closed all in the middle of this. So all the possible challenges that you could face, we had them, and we were able to follow the results afterwards. In this Rwanda project, thanks to Pete and his amazing ability, we were really able to tap into what is going on with the teachers. So one thing we looked at was the motivation. Why are they applying for badges? What makes a person want to have their skills recognized? And the main thing main driver was curiosity. I wanted to test if I had the skills required for this badge. So they looked at the badge and the criteria that we had attached to it. And they said, you know, let me try this one. Maybe I have the skills needed for this. And that was kind of, they got the first one, then the curiosity took them forward to the next one and the third one and the fourth one and so on. So I think that was a very good thing, because I think curiosity is a strong driver. If people are curious to see if they have ability to get something, if they gain the badge, they get a reward for that curiosity, and that becomes a motivating factor. So that was a good find. And another thing we also followed was like how much time are the teachers using in making their badge applications. The way we did it was that after every badge, we asked them to fill out a small survey asking questions like how long did it take for you to apply for this badge? How do you feel afterwards? And we could see that, you know, there was this increase. So the more invested they got into the process, the more they were willing to use time in preparing their badge application. So some badges, maybe they looked at them beforehand, decided to leave them for later because they are more challenging, but they came back to them at a later stage. So they started off with easier ones and then moved on to the ones that they found were more challenging. So that was also for us an encouraging find from the Rwanda case. And we got positive feedback on a scale from 1 to 5. You know, they enjoyed it and they thought it was suitable. And even though how close did the badge skills match the skills you use for work, that was pretty high as well. But naturally with this, we have to remember that usually after any training, you ask for feedback. People always rate it quite highly because nobody wants to participate in a long program and then they said that this didn't benefit me, I wasted my time. But this was also optional, so they were able to drop out if they wanted to, but not many did, and more of them joined, so they were spreading the word. So these were my two cases from the old normal. In the old normal, before this pandemic, I could see that the badges were usually linked to something really safe in a sense. Formal employment, a clear target group like teachers and things we can do with them. And we were talking a lot about skills and what they need to do. And talking about this vaguer, like my passion sector, the informal sector and those people, it was a bit like, maybe later. But now things have changed. Now things have really changed. So what has happened since this pandemic started in the conversations I'm having? So this is not a study, this is personal opinion. But ever since June this year, I have had more and more conversations about applying the badging approach to different contexts outside formal employment. There was this one partner in Senegal who said, you know what, Satu, the world will never go back to the way it was. We will never go back to the world where training is only contact training. You know, this digital thing that now we're forced to use, it has come to stay, and we need to now change fundamentally the way we work and what we offer. And I think it is something like, in a sense, a positive impact of this pandemic, is that it has really forced everybody all of a sudden out of our comfort zones and embrace, you know, the distance work, e-learning, mobile learning, distance education. And it has been challenging, but I think the positive thing is that we were pushed there. So I think we're held back behind this barrier of comfortability, and now we just have to go there. So I've realized that a lot of partners are realizing that now is the time to really embrace something new and do things differently. And badges seem to answer that need pretty well, because it's something that makes sense to people. What if we were able to validate skills in a digital way that is scalable? It's from distance. For once, being distance is a positive thing. Key things that we always have to consider when working in the global south is access and affordability, because in some countries data is incredibly expensive. In some countries it's pretty much at the same price level as Finland. So But the price of data is a component, and people's access. So those are the two things that you always have to keep in mind. Do they have devices? Can they access the internet? Because without the two, merging kind of becomes very difficult. So new normal cases. So things that we're talking about today, and these are the things that get me really excited. So the first is Badger Senegal. So this is a project that we're planning together with the Pathfinder Foundation in Senegal and in Côte d'Ivoire. So it's a foundation based in, I think, 3 countries in Western Africa. And they work in training youth, especially the informal sector. So you can imagine my excitement. So what we are looking at doing with them is validating skills of the informal sector in customer service and entrepreneurship. And what the sectors we're looking into is women in agriculture, so rural women who are farming. So how can we start validating their skills in entrepreneurship that supports the farming? Because farming as a business is one of the key drivers for the future economies. Electricity. In Durban, there's a school doing electricity training. So how could we attach entrepreneurship to the electricity courses and validate those skills with badges, of the students, so that they are more ready and can validate their entrepreneurial skills for business loans and so forth. Driving, your all taxi drivers, so entrepreneurship for them. We were also talking about doing some sort of driving test badges. We'll see about that. And then for entrepreneurship and customer service, especially shopkeepers, the boulangerie owners, I don't know what that is in English, the guys who sell you bread and rolls, very French things. And also the taxi drivers. So customer service for them. So you're having your own small business. How do you serve your customers well? Validating those skills. Again, it's kind of like giving them confidence that they have the skills necessary. Also showing that they have skills. It's about building self-esteem, but also it's something that they can use if they want to apply for formal employment. Like if a shopkeeper wants to go and work for a supermarket, so that he can show or she can show that she has customer service skills, and they have been validated with badges. And because they're working in the sector, the training comes after the validation. So that's Senegal. The way we work is that Pathfinder has training in customer service. So I went through all of the training materials that they're having, the contents, and framed that against the Finnish vocational approach, where we look at different areas of knowledge, the underpinning knowledge, and managing the processes and tools and so forth, and suggested these headings of badges. One is like knowledge, how to take care of your environment, how to look professional, how to make sure your services are profitable and so forth. On the other side, we have customer service situations, how you welcome, how you identify customers, how to respond to their needs and so forth. And these will be created into badges. And the trick is that I could not come up with these topics. I need my local partner to tell me what the people are able to do and what we can ask from these people. For me, it would be a more theoretical exercise looking at existing curriculums, but these are based on the actual needs and the capacity of the people on the ground in Senegal. Badger Côte d'Ivoire, then my second case, which is coming up, it's looking at more entrepreneurship skills of small-scale entrepreneurs, self-employed people in the informal sector, in urban settings, in Abidjan and so forth. So unlike in Senegal, where we look at all the farming and electricity and so forth, in Côte d'Ivoire, we want to focus really on the informal sector entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurship skills. So those skills are same. But with this, I wanted to share the skills framework that we're working on. So here we are looking at the process of how somebody who is starting a business, the ability to recognize a problem in the society around him, your community, how to build, identify potential customers. So basically the basic process that you go through when you want to start your company, like how to develop your idea. And really, instead of just hustling, instead of just trying to find somebody to whom you can sell a flip-flop or some airtime, how to see yourself as an entrepreneur, as somebody who has a business, because business requires planning. It requires having a vision and a plan that you execute in longer term. So it's not just about trying to make ends meet today and starting again tomorrow. It's trying to give people the ability to plan forward a bit. So this is what we're working on. And again, you know, in a sense, the badge category and the badge groups are something I can work with, because those are very general. We talk a lot about entrepreneurship and startups and those skills. But then the badges are, what does this skill mean in this context of the small scale micro entrepreneurs, self-employed people in Western Africa? So this is where, again, I need my partners to tell me, okay, what can we put here? But this is something I'm really excited about, because the entrepreneurship skills, we can really scale them all across the continent in different countries, because these things stay the same. And a lot of the entrepreneurship programs focus on startups and digital businesses and really those higher end skills. But we're looking down to the very small self-employed entrepreneurs and how to build them up towards business owners. So how about having 2 boulangeries instead of having the one? Or how about hiring somebody else to do something? In agriculture, how about growing a surplus that you can sell instead of just growing something for yourself? You know, these small things that we can introduce to people as ideas and have an amazing impact. And then badge in Rwanda with the teachers is also something that is moving forward. But in here too, something has changed. In the first case, we're looking at really the practical skills that teachers should have. So really the tools, like how to use email, how to create videos, how very, in a sense, hard skills. But now the focus is more on, okay, so we have this online environment, we have materials for the teachers to use with students, but how do we teach teachers on how to make use of the online environment, how to use the materials that exist? So it's more about like the pedagogical side than just the tool. And I think this is also a shift that we're now seeing, that when previously digital tools were just about the tools, now we talk much more about the application of the tool, which is so much more important. So I'm really happy. So this is what we're now talking about. It's built around the theory of community of inquiry, where really learning is seen as a process, but at the same time about building different types of presences by the teacher to the learning process. And I think in e-learning, this small side note, but it's so important to understand that learning is not just about having something serviced digitally, but it's about something that still happens inside a person. And we need to have presence, in a sense, human presence somehow manufactured into the learning process, even when it happens in an online environment. So this is something that we're looking at working on and developing further in Rwanda. And just before our call today, the thing that we're talking about, and if somebody can help me out with this, I'd be so grateful. Right now, I don't really know what to do, but another topic that we're talking about, like how to use badges to validate skills in construction work. So that's all I know for now, but that's something that would be interesting. So in the construction business, what could be the skills that we could start validating with badges for youth? I'm not a construction expert, and those are really hand-on skills, and how to do it in a situation where devices and connectivity can be an issue. So how can we make this in a way that is possible? Because it's so easy to plan for things when everybody has internet and a smartphone, but if we take those out of the equation and not everybody has a smartphone or connectivity, then what can you do? And the last thing I want to, the new normal thing is with this Innovaction program, which is training people in innovation capacity. So in a sense, pre-entrepreneurship program. But one challenge that we have noticed on the continent is the lack of innovation capacity. So people tend to, instead of innovating a new service or product, they tend to copy something that already exists. So there's this Innovaction program now targeting developing the innovation capacity of people. So how do you innovate something completely new, not just copying from others? And the work that I look forward to doing there is creating the badges to validate the innovation capacity of the participants of the Innovaction program. So the program is now running until December. And now that I get to know the students and the contents and so forth, so for the next cohort, the idea is that we can start implementing badges to validate those skills too. Also in here, this is an informal program. Formally, innovation skills are not validated. So if you want to build the innovation ecosystem and innovation capacity on the continent, recognizing that skill has value. So yeah, and to end with, I wanted to share my challenges, because this is exciting work, but it's so hard. It's so hard. So some of the challenges that you face when working with badges and skills validation on the continent, and this is like the dilemma. We are in the new normal. We are in the digital world. We are in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution. But at the same time, we work in an environment that has a lot of constraints. So one is like, how do you find the correct challenge level for badges? How do you make them simple enough and tangible enough, but still something that measures something real, so that they are not too easy and not too complicated? How to figure that out, especially with the informal sector, where we don't, well, it's a huge sector, so there are people of different levels there, but really how to find that golden level that is not too challenging and not too easy either. It's a challenge. And the main thing is how to make badges accessible to target users. Access is always the key with innovations and with emerging markets. So, in a sense, badges are easy. You can put them and merge them in so many platforms, but then it doesn't make them accessible to the end user. So what's the way in which, when I have that guy driving his car all around Kigali city every day, how can I make sure that that guy runs into badges and the ability to apply for badges and get skills validated while he's doing his round and sitting in his car for 30 minutes and now waiting for the next customer? Because that's the time he could use to apply for badges. And then, they are finding ways to measure skills in a practical way that meets the capacity of the recipients. And these are the challenges, especially with the informal sector, is that there are people who have limited literacy and numeracy skills. There are people in the informal sector with bachelor's degrees, with diplomas, certificates, but also those who have dropped out of primary school. So limited literacy and numeracy can be an issue. Limited language skill, because there are so many local languages in Africa. So if you start translating everything to every single local language, it's a challenge. Also for the validation part, if somebody sends in a badge application for a skill, if it's in a language that only a few understand, then it becomes harder. People have limited ICT skills. People are very handy with their mobile phones. Those who have mobile phones and smartphones really know how to use them, but then not everybody has a smartphone. If they do have a smartphone, they might not use it all the time because of the data costs. And because when people don't make a lot of money, they have limited means to purchase data bundles. And this was actually a challenge that we faced in Rwanda with the teachers. They were saying, could you please provide us with data? Because they had to buy extra bundles of data to work on our badging project, because they had to connect, especially when the schools were closed and they were sent to their homes outside the school's free Wi-Fi. It became an issue to them. Like, why would I spend money, my own personal money, to buy internet to get your badges? What do the badges get me? So these are kind of like the tough things to work with. Some of the challenges I like finding the right challenge levels, and so that's like a great discovery. But then the accessibility of devices and cost and all of that, I find it a lot more challenging to cross. Like if we could offer badges and validate skills so that people could have access with text messages or USSD codes that they use a lot, like for mobile payments, it would be so much easier. But badges have been developed in our environment, which is very well developed. So they kind of work in the online space, and there's no, to my knowledge, a very, very low tech version of badges. If there were, my life would be a lot easier. But anywho, that was my presentation on what was and what is going to be with badging skills in Africa. We had a few countries, I hope, Innovaction that's basically Ghana. So there's Ghana, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Rwanda, Tunisia. So so some bases covered. And now if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And I hope this was interesting.
Indeed, it was very interesting. Thank you very much, Satu. It was very, very interesting. Well, we could start from the question in the chat. If you see the chat, or I could read.
Now I do.
Now you do. So we could start from the last question, which you can see just at the bottom of the chat. So, what are your main goals of issuing badges in different type of programs, validation skills, motivation, people?
Oh, that is a very good question. Thank you for asking it, because it's a good point. So the goal sort of depends on the issue and the target group. When we talk about the informal sector, it's really, for people who don't have any education, so they don't have certificates, they don't have diplomas, but they could have badges to show that they have skills and capability to work on something. So that's for that. It's for employment, also for self-image and motivation. So in a sense, the hidden agenda, if I can say that, is that people could, understand that they have skills and they have competence, they have ability, and get hungry towards learning more and knowing more, and through that, slowly progress and become even more competent. So that's really the thing. For the formal side, it's more towards also the employer to map out the skills and capabilities of the employees. So what do they know, and where are the gap areas, where do they have to focus training efforts and so forth. So it differs. It differs.
Thank you very much. There was one other, it was not really a question, but it was more a reaction on, I would say, a topic about refugees. So when you mentioned the use of badges for motivation and in different kind of informal context, there was, I think, some people in Tuya, for example, and other people were speaking about it. Great to use badges with refugees and so on. Do you have some statement, or some would say?
Yeah.
Badges?
Yeah. Badges and refugees make so much sense. They make so much sense. Imagine somebody coming over, all they need to remember is their email address to be able to access, their badges and certificates. So that will save so much time. The challenge with that, and this is kind of the unfortunate thing about living in a stiff and bureaucratic world, is that we are still not, and we should be, and this is where we should go. But today we're not in the world where our official training institutions would recognize badges or like informal certificates. They don't often even recognize formal certificates from other countries, like in Finland. But in a sense, direction where the world is going, and the direction that I believe in, is that in the future we will let go of these formal structures of, you have to have a certain type of university degree to be validated for something in here, but your actual competence will matter. And that's when badges in like refugee situations makes so much sense. And even badging people after they come to Finland, before we start showing, well, any other country, but after we start pushing people towards training, if they say that they are engineers or electricians or whatever, how about validating those skills first and then seeing what we do about the training? I think it would have an impact in again, the self-image and motivation and how people can integrate to the new societies. Yeah.
Thank you. There was a question about what is the awareness of badges of the employees, and how do they value if someone has a badge? So it's perhaps about more about employers. Do employers value the badges of employees?
Well, employers in the African context, they are not often very aware of badges, but then what has value for them is the fact that badges are very trustworthy. So if I have a paper certificate, it's easier to copy one from my friend to myself than trying to copy a badge and present somebody else's badges as my own. So that is very difficult. So they from discussions, they're in a sense cautiously positive. In the sense they're saying, yes, we're willing to consider, we are willing to look at these. So they are not saying out of the blue that no, we will not consider, we will not perceive this well. I think it's a question of somebody going to them with badges and them looking at, okay, who issued this and what was the process. But there's opportunity there.
Yeah, I think if I can add something about that, and you spoke about
about
the new normal, not only in Africa but in many countries. I think we are going to live a big transformation in the job sector, and after the COVID, I think more and more we'll see, I would say, migration from one job to another job, and perhaps jobs will change, and we will be in a situation where diploma and certificates are not really enough for building bridges between the competencies of potential employees and needs of employers. So I think that we are going more and more in a direction where job description will be less formal and less, I would say, typical. And in this sense, badges are very interesting for making connections. There was also a comment from Maria about assessments. If you can see in the chat.
Maria Jakovic. Hi, Maria. Bloom's Taxonomy. Yes, Bloom's Taxonomy is a great tool to use, actually. It's just, but challenge in a sense, because there are those people who come and say we can have a test to measure competence, like an online test. But if you want to really measure competence, like skills, knowledge, and aptitudes, it's really hard to put all of that into a test. And the one benefit I see in badges is that we can really have a rich way of assessing skills. Like people can submit videos, all sorts of evidence are possible to assess. So we can really look more at towards real competence and the higher levels of learning in Bloom's taxonomy. Actually getting to the top levels is always hard with any assessment, which is like a snap assessment on a particular thing, but still. But the challenge is really breaking through the lower levels of Bloom's taxonomy and just like remembering and understanding basically, and really towards the ability to apply information and go up from there. But I think for me, my argument is that because of we can use so many different ways of people demonstrating their competence, demonstrating their skills, so we can go beyond the three bottom layers, at least to some extent. But it is a great tool for yourself to see what you're trying to do. So awesome comment.
I wanted to get back to one question. It was, well, I wouldn't say it's, well, it can be quite Africa specific. Well, the fact that people are using a lot of mobile phones, basically, and perhaps less traditional desktop computers like in Europe. We are launching at the end of November the Open Batch Passport app. So it's nearly ready. We're already testing it, and I think it will support the work that you are doing, of course, in Africa, because when people will get the badges, the phones, and they will be able to apply for badges, the phone, and to endorse each other. So, well, we are testing it now and looks very promising. I mean, it's making the use of Open Batch Passport very easy, and I'm very excited about to see what kind of possibility it will open. And it's related also about what you were speaking about constructions. Construction, because I think now when we get the app, it means that badges are coming more in context, external context, outside. You know? Not in the office, your badge in the office, but you can have your badges, let's say, where you are working. And I just wanted to tell you that I have contact with the French construction sector, that there is some big project coming soon about how to basically grow awareness in the construction sector in France. And so I will be perhaps speaking more about this subject in, let's say, in January. Just can't tell that there will be, let's say, big consortium behind this project, and probably an Open Batch Passport for the construction sector in France. So
nice.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And we were speaking with construction people about the fact that basically with the app, it could be possible on the construction site just to go physically on the wall and get a badge from, you know, you have been installing some concrete element somewhere, you just can scan something or with a sensor get the badge automatically in the app. So we are dreaming about this kind of possibilities. Basically, when you have badges in your app, you have your location, so you can, you know, the system know basically where you are in a situation. So you have different kind of scenarios that we could build on it.
Very cool. Very cool. So I look forward to that.
Yeah. So I will make a presentation in November, at the end of November, about these new features. Don't miss it.
Nice.
There's one more comment here, is that perhaps an international organization that validates badges for those who are displaced, marginalized, or refugees is a necessity for badges to be recognized globally. It's a dream, but with 80 million in this situation, there's a huge need. Do you have any ideas about that?
I think in Finland, the Finnish Red Cross has been interested in that, but it stopped on, I think, on the school side in Finland. So Red Cross is big, even though it was the Finnish Red Cross. I think we would need a project that would combine an international organization with some distinguished schools. So kind of then you would have all the elements, because if we would have one of those large organizations and some bona fide schools that everybody knows, and they would come out and say that, okay, we are doing these badges and we see these as valuable, that would help cross the bridge in a sense for the other educators. Naturally, you know, a huge organization itself can push pretty far, but I think still, I mostly know Finland, but in the Finnish context, the bureaucracy is a real thing. But I think to some sort of that type of projects where you link these schools and say, hey, what if, you know, these are the skills we've recognized and we have these guys that we work with, would you then consider, and then they could work with that and say, okay, these we could accept. because the idea, like in Finland, is already existing of validating existing skills. Is somehow the processes just seem to be still a bit stiff, but the ideas are there. We just need these strong players to push. I think I'm too small, but one of those international organizations, together with a big school, they could really make a change, push the envelope.
Thanks.
I have here a small comment, but it's quite, I would say, philosophical. Comment. I think we're speaking a lot about validation. I think you told me in Africa there is basically always a bit formal approach, even with the informal. So basically a badge, in one way, it's a bit like a validation. You know what I mean? What I want to say that, for example, in the French context, they are speaking very much about recognition. It's not the badge, only a certificate of validation matching something, but it's more that there is a need to be recognized. And I think for refugees and so on, there is a social dimension, the badge, the need to be recognized. And now the way to be recognized, it doesn't have to be always matching with some authorities, criteria or competence framework. If I get back in the construction topic, basically they just explained me that, for example, in France there are a lot of peer recognition in the construction. So you are basically, you can practice as a new, let's say, artisan, or I don't know what you call it, but you have a master which is basically working with you, and this master will basically assess your skills and recognize. So there is recognition by peers as important as recognition by basically a formal authority. Just, I think, I don't want to say that we don't need official validation, we don't need criteria, we don't need competence frameworks, not the point. But I think that we must always keep the recognition and validation connected, and not to use badges just to create digital credentials and to make what people were doing 200 years ago with certificates.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think one of the great things with badges is that you can build them the way that you want to, in a sense. So you're like, for me, like the badge criteria come from the actual needs and the competencies of the people, rather than some official documents. We can visit them for reference if we want to. But for me, even though my focus is on, in a sense, the validation part, but the recognition is they're like buddies, they're side to side. Because the big thing is that for people who have very little or who have nothing, the validation is at the same time, the recognition part is huge. It's like saying, I'm seeing you, I'm seeing what you can do. And maybe your friend doesn't have a way to say, but at least I can do something. So that's, in a sense, the guiding principle is in the recognition. But in order to really push the people forward, my tool is validation. If that makes any sense. But I agree, the recognition part is essential.
Yeah, and basically just for ending.
Yeah.
My point, the vision of Mozilla when Mozilla created open badges, it was to recognize that 70 to 80% of things we learn everywhere and every when. It was the sentence. And basically, if we are using badges for, let's say, formalize or to make formal this recognition, there is a big risk that we don't recognize this 70 to 80% of informal. So making informal formal will not help to recognize informal. That's the point.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
matching predefined badges is still not helping for recognizing informal, because the informal by definition is not formal. So it's interesting thing. But well, it can, if we are basically behind it, it could be interesting to do something. Okay. Well, any question? Any more?
Well, one comment was just about what you were talking about, was that recognition would go a long way to give hope to and self-esteem to refugees in camps. And
Yeah,
who live
and
in those
even,
camps a very long time. Yeah.
Yeah, and even the people who come out of refugee camps. We had a webinar, I think it was last week, where there was somebody from Finnish Church Aid, and they work in refugee camps, and we're just discussing with him how it doesn't, the people's need for this type of validation doesn't stop at these camps. You know, I fully agree that there's so much to do there, but there's also, you know, the rural refugees in that is like even bigger than the people who are refugees in camps. So there are many places where we should do this type of work to really kind of come as peers, recognize value, and help people forward. Good, thank you. It's been a very, very nice hour, and thank you for all the questions and comments. It was fantastic.
Well, thank you. That's very interesting to hear, like really practical application of these badges, and hear about Africa in general, how things work there.
It is a cool place.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Satu.
Thank you, everyone, and bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.